Hello folks, here's Duncan again at Freezing Eagle on the A-frame build, and I am here to fulfill a promise I made to you guys to get into some actual nitty-gritty cost factors associated with taking on a little project like this. So I'm going to take a few minutes and see if I can put this in an orderly manner that makes a little bit of sense, because this is the first time I ever decided to take on a build from our piece of raw land versus working as a carpenter on somebody else's projects. Typically, I've done a few foundation jobs for people, but as a helper, not really that guy. I was always a carpenter. So once we had some concrete to lay green plates on and build from there, that was kind of where I got in the project, and I ended up kind of on the finish crew over a course of about 30 years. Started out doing framing and labor work, and over time really got to love working with wood, and especially finished carpentry type projects. So this project for me is a real fun from the ground up, even before that, learning experience. Unfortunately, it takes, unless you've really got some people to lean on for the resources when you're young, you're working for somebody else. And now that I'm semi-retired at 65, I finally got in a position to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to take some of my retirement cash and I'm going to roll it into a project. I've been doing some part-time real estate work in southern Vermont for the last 12 years. And this is actually a lot in a little development called Alpenwald Village in Stamford and actually Reedsboro. The lot this property, this A-frame is on, is actually, it was a 1 acre in Stamford, and there's a back lot dropping down the hill. There's an acre in town of Reedsboro, and that's down over the hill, so I'm not building on that. It's just attached to this lot. So this originally was built as a development across from a little old ski area called Dutch Hill that was active in the 60s, 70s on up, and they had some rough years in the mid-80s. This area and a couple others nearby closed and kind of just disappeared. One of them was restored by an organization called the Catamount Trail Association, and it was a little hogback ski area over on Route 9, and that eventually got taken over. There's a little state park called Molly Stark down below it. It's really nice, and it has hiking trails that go up over the old ski mountain there, up onto the kind of a hairpin turn with a visitor center and coin-operated binoculars and spectacular views up there off Route 9 up past Wilmington. So this is a little further south. I'm only about 10 minutes from the Mass line down here. So we're in Vermont, but not very far, just enough to say we are Vermonters. And so this little development was put in while the ski area was operating. And in the mid-80s, the little ski area closed. And then this actually became a ghost town, basically. There's hundreds of lots, like somewhere around 300 lots it was divided into, most of them around an acre, give or take. And some of them had been settled and developed. And when I started doing real estate, you couldn't give away Alpenwald. There was so little demand for these lots. There was, enough land in Vermont for sale, and there was a guy that put in this development and sold a lot of other Vermont property, and he would buy old farms and break them up into various size of lots, and depending on the zoning, sell them. They could be anywhere from 10, 20, 30 acres or more, and he'd break them down as small as you could get them, get the minimum road frontage that was required, and then sell them, and he made a ton of money. Eventually, Vermont sort of cracked down to make sure they got a cut of all those sales, all the capital gains involved, so they imposed some taxes based on how long you held the property. But this little development had been put together, and over the course of the last 12 years, these lots went from, maybe $3,000, $4,000, went up eventually $7,000, $8,000, $10,000, $12,000, and amazingly enough, when I finally reached the point during COVID, the land inventory in Vermont shrank terrifically. There wasn't much available, and what was there got snapped right up, and it became very desirable to have land in Vermont. And one of the few places you could get a reasonably priced lot was up here, because there were quite a few unsold lots and undeveloped lots, and it's a beautiful little mountain. It's a little mountain, a little smaller than the ski area mountain, but it was divided up, and there's a network of many roads up here. It's very easy to get lost. And I don't know if they're Austrian or German, but the names of all these roads are crazy. Bergrucken Lane is actually the name of the road this is on. And so I'm going to come in here and take a little bit of time, step over my cable there if I can do it without tripping. So I bought this in 2 years ago, and this lot, I had it listed for an older lady out of somewhere out in Colorado. She was older. She and her husband had bought it many years ago, and he'd passed away, and they were never going to use it. So I had the listing, and I would show it to people, and they would want to be a little further out or a little closer in, or wanted it a little bigger, or one thing or another. But anyway, after about 5 or 6 showings, one day I came down in here, walking through the trees, and I began to realize it's facing south directly, and it's a really nice little lot. And this driveway didn't have to be built up very much to go right into the edge. There's sort of a little bluff where the property drops down, and I just fell in love with it. I'm like, you know what, this is perfect. It aims due south, and it's kind of drops off, so eventually I can get a view. So I had a guy I hired for the site work, and he cleared the trees, put in the driveway, and I've got posts here for the leach field. Eventually it's going to go in here. There's some wood there. I actually had quite a bit taken down here. Beautiful maples too. So I have a whole pile down at my house for firewood, and some left here. I was just talking to my neighbors, and what's very cool, they actually just, I drove up here to just do this video, and they were walking the property, and they had a drone. They had flown a drone around into the A-frame, up over it to show what the potential views could be, and they're sending me that, so I'm actually going to upload that to my channel as soon as I have that. This is a fence they put up. I think they just want a little privacy on their side. When they realized how close the property or the driveway was to their property line, this suddenly popped up. They began building it. I'm like, well, you know, they're on their property and it's wood, it'll weather, it'll look all right. And as you can see, as I'm walking in here, I set up all that Easy Up's got a lot of water in it. I had to prop that up so it wouldn't fall over, but it's looking a little rough right now. It started accumulating some water, and had probably 100 pounds of water sitting on it. So the last week was terribly hot. So this boat belongs to my brother. We've been using that as our escape. We'll work in the morning, and then the other day I was practically ready to have a heat stroke because the humidity was extreme. So what we'll do is work until we sort of hit that wall where we have to get some relief from the heat, and then we'll take that over to a nearby lake about 15 minutes away, the Harriman Reservoir in Wilmington. We can drop that little boat in and float around and have a beer or two or go water skiing or whatever. So there's a lot of nice recreational opportunities around here, mountains and lakes. So anyway, getting back into what I promised to describe, I brought a little sheet. I've got some cost analysis stuff to go over. So this is where we are right now. We got 4 courses of plywood on there that are nailed off. We've got our rope and pulley system set up for pulling the rest of the plywood up, and then eventually the roofing material. We're going to just use this technology because it's working so well, and it's safe, and it makes the work easier. So that's what we're going to do with that. Now here, I look out here, and the road going by, one thing I like about this association, some people don't like rules and restrictions, but Vermont is kind of nice in that, you know, if you come up here in Vermont, you can bring your guns with you, you can ride your 4-wheelers on the roads in this association. It links directly to a network of ATV trails. So there's guys that'll come through here on the ATVs, and they'll jump on the trail networks, and they can go in the back side of Reedsboro and then network of trails. And in the winter, this has direct access to the VAST, which is Vermont Association of Snow Travelers, and that is a snowmobile network that goes all the way from southern Vermont to the Canadian border. And that's very popular. So one of the benefits here is if people want to come up and rent this later, that's my goal at this point, is to be able to rent this out. And it's basically 4 seasons. You've got ski areas, several of them within less than an hour. You've got the vast trail network. You've got an ATV trail network. You've got lakes nearby. You've got fall foliage. You've got entertainment down in Williamstown in North Adams, not too far away. So a lot of nice things about this area. It's pretty much a year-round resort area, but we're not right at the foot of a ski area or anything where it's going to have to be astronomically expensive. So anyway, so when I bought this piece of property, I had it listed for $13,000, and I ended up negotiating with the woman for the $13,000 to give that. I think I might have had it listed for $14,900 or something, but since she didn't have to pay a commission, she got it basically full price. I think I gave her $13,000 and I'm going to put my glasses on, I'll check this chart. I wrote a little chart of all the costs here, and I broke it right down to, I rounded things to the nearest dollar or so. So when I bought the property, this particular piece of land, including closing costs, attorney's fees, recording fees, was about $14,000. So this is a 2-acre lot. I actually bought the next 2 lots over because the association had foreclosed on them from somebody else a few years before, and I really wanted a little bit more property and a buffer. So this lot didn't have a lot of road frontage. It was about 100 feet, and then there was a nice pie piece, kind of pie-shaped piece next door, and then another buildable lot beyond it. So I got those. I paid another $10,000 each for those. The association is a volunteer board. They couldn't cut me any bargains, so I just had to pay the money. So I'm $20,000 and a little bit more into the other 2 lots, but one's buildable. So my hope and dream is that if this works out as a rental, then I'll probably put another little cabin, probably something a little easier to build than this, which is, I'm actually really excited to be building this, but it's a daunting project in its own way. We're working up some pretty good heights there. We're going to have some safety equipment. I'm going to run a cable across the ridge, and then we can clip carabiners into it, so when we're on the very high end, we can have a little safety program going. Right now it's not uncomfortably high, but it's going to be more uncomfortable as we get near the top. So, but we're playing it safe, taking our time, no rush. Okay, so this piece of land here, all told about 14,000. This one's 2 acres. Most of them are about 1 acre, but the lower acre down in Reedsboro is kind of over the hill, and it was steeper, and I think they just sort of let that be part of it, the lot, because it was behind it. And that actually drops off into sort of a no man's land where it's down below it. There's no section of the development immediate to it, so it's kind of creates this little privacy buffer, and it's, affords some hiking trails down in there, which is cool. And so we're talking $14,000 for this double lot. Then the engineer that was going to obtain the wastewater permit and do the septic design, the markings up in this area in the development were kind of obscure, and he couldn't determine where the boundary was, so I paid a surveyor $1,865 to come in here and establish the property lines. Luckily what he did, he was able to establish this line between myself and the neighbor, and the line on the other end beyond the other 3rd lot over. So now I was able to get a wastewater permit for that. So that's a potential future project. So we're into it. $1,865 for the survey. Then the perk and the wastewater permit. In Vermont, it used to be simpler and less costly, but over, I think it was in 2006, they went over to having a state required wastewater permit with a septic design, and it has specifics. And a lot of these systems now are more elaborate than the old typical gravity, single tank, baffle, distribution box, leach field. Those simple systems in the old days are kind of a thing of the past, unfortunately. And a lot of them involve pumps and filters and 2-stage tanks, and in some cases double tanks, so that you have a basic breakdown tank, then it's piped into an effluent tank, and then pumped to the leach field. And mine, I had to have the one on my house down in Stanford replaced some years ago, and that ended up having to be a pumped system to go up on my back hill, because the leach field in my yard was, you dig down 6 inches and you're in water, so it had failed and had to be redone. So they were able to find a hill up behind my house that I own that I could actually clear and put the leach field up there, but it had to be pumped 50 feet up to go into it, and that was a little bit tricky, but again, it still saved money. It was still a gravity system. After the pump, it just went up on the hill and didn't have to be a mound. In other words, it needed to be pumped up on the hill. So didn't want to have to do that, but you got to do what you got to do. Okay, so next on the list, so the perk and the wastewater permit, and it involves a design that shows where your leach field and your well will be. They have to be 100 feet apart. So I have a wellhead that probably in behind the boat here. You've probably seen this on other videos, but that had to be 100 feet from the leach field for obvious reasons. It's kind of behind all. You can just see it, that kind of in the back of this easy up. I can see the wellhead kind of hiding back there. So anyway, So we're dealing with that. So the site work, I had the guy that came in here, he did the driveway, cleared the trees, pulled the stumps, piled up the good wood, kind of burned off the debris, and got as far as doing this back here. His price included the foundation dig, the installation of 5 of these precast concrete piers. And I'll just walk over this. You can see these. These are the precast piers that you buy that are tapered, so they have a large base, and then they come to the top, and you've got your bolts coming out of the ground. So I've got 2 of these here that you can see that are going to support the front of a porch. The other end of the house, there's a deck there that you can kind of just see the green wood. There's 3 of these back there, so they were included in the price. I don't have the itemization for what they were, but I like these because when you have a guy with an excavator, you can just punch a hole down, drop those in, and the nice thing about a tapered pier is that frost can't push it up out of the ground because it's tapered, the bottom's bigger, and it's not like the old sonotube systems where they were cylindrical and frost could actually grab them and push them up. And I've seen cases where those will just inch their way out of the ground a little at a time, year after year, and 15 years later they're literally falling over because they worked their way up out of the ground. So always use tapered piers if you're going to build off of them. Never use just straight cylindrical piers. More likely to fail. So he charged me a total of $33,000. That included all the things I mentioned, and the foundation hole, which is 24 by 36, and the backfilling of the same. So that's a kind of a heavy cost factor. Then the foundation itself is a full 8-foot wall with a slab in the basement, 4 inches or more, a couple of footings for the girder support posts, in the backfill. So these guys did an excellent job. Everything was within specs, so I was able to build right off of it, nothing being too far out of plumb or level. So that was $26,500. And I had talked about doing this on a monolithic, a frost-protected monolithic slab, which is a cool idea. They do a lot of commercial buildings on these, and that being frost-protected, it means it's insulated around the perimeter. You can do it on the underside of it so you can run radiant heat, but I finally abandoned that. My brother's like, well, an A-frame, you really lose some interior space, and for the added cost, you wind up with all that space, and it's more flexible in terms, in fact, we've changed the design of this. We're kind of tweaking it as we go along, but you have a lot more flexibility with this because it's a basement, it's open, we can run the plumbing and the wiring any way we want. If you do a cast slab, you're casting your plumbing and things into the slab, and then you have no flexibility, and if something fails, it's much harder to fix. So, and in view of, and one of my points here is simply, my brother basically told me, when you add up all the other costs of doing a build like this, don't skimp on the building, because if you're building it yourself, that's actually a modest amount of the total package price. You're doing all this infrastructure. I've got a quote for the septic system of $30,000, which to me is pretty extreme, but like everything, it's gone up in price. So to get a more sophisticated system that's fairly compact, not done nowadays, yeah, that's a $30,000 item. So you've got that. You've got the well, which I hadn't gotten to yet. So the well, so far I'm $10,000 into that well, and that's just for the bore and the casing. So that goes down 445 feet and will produce 6 gallons a minute. And he had to go that deep to get the 6 gallons a minute. So just to have a pipe go into the ground and have water that can be reached at that depth, that's $10,000. And the good thing about it, it's a 6-inch well casing. And he said, yeah, that has about 600 gallons of storage because of the depth. And the static water level, which means the level that the water stands in that pipe without reference to a pump or anything else, is about 40 feet down. So you go down 40 feet and you have standing water in there. So you drop a pump in there 50 feet, you could suck water out of it, but you're going to send it all the way maybe 20 feet off the bottom so you don't suck up silt or anything. But you're going to have a lot of stored water in that. And that's what the benefit of a deep well is. It's got a lot of storage as opposed to a shallow well or a dug well where you basically don't have any storage. So this thing's far enough down to have storage. So the well came in at the total, including, and the rest of the package will include linking that to the house, the pump, the wire, the link to the basement to bring the water in, the pressure tank, and the other equipment necessary to get the water so you can just hook your plumbing to it. That's going to be a total of $15,280. So that's a chunk. The building permit, $115 from the town. This is in an association, so I'm dealing with $350 a year per lot. So this particular lot, it'll be $350 a year dues. But you know, the good thing about this association is that covers all the road maintenance. So because it's an association, it's a private road system. It's not served by the town. So you pay the dues, but these guys that, actually it's the same guys that did my site work that take care of the roads. They do a great job. They're always plowed and well maintained and graded. So, you know, whenever there's a problem with the road system, they come in here and they fix it. So they, you know, to me that's worth it. That's a value. Other thing is there's power there's a telephone pole right beyond this little wood pile over here. So I'm going to tap that. I'm going to be running underground power, and I don't have a final estimate on that, but I would guess it's probably going to be maybe 3,000 or 4,000. I can run underground wire, and I looked into the prices of the actual wire, and copper would be astronomically expensive, like something like $8,000 or $9,000 just to run a couple hundred feet of, whereas the aluminum for underground service is perfectly acceptable. That will run about $900 for the cable. So I'm going to pay the site guy to come back here. Now you see a little bit of conduit. That's schedule 40. Turns out I'm going to have to run schedule 80, which is heavier to go into the driveway. So I returned some of the schedule 40. The place I'm getting it from doesn't carry the schedule 80. So what I'm going to do is I saved enough 40 to go from the pole to the driveway. Then I'm going to get the heavier stuff to run it over to the corner of the A-frame. So that left corner is where that power will come in. So it's got to be run under the ground, but then I won't be worrying about trees landing on it or other vulnerabilities. So that's one benefit of underground power. You don't look at it and trees can't fall on it. That'll be underground. So that's a cost factor. You know, I'm guesstimating about 3,000 to 4,000. So I know, you know, I have the power company doesn't charge too much to hitch it up once you've got everything else in place. And then we'll get a box in there. Luckily in Vermont, you can do your own wiring and plumbing on your own house. So I'll be able to save some money on those items. Okay, so we have $350 a year dues. Taxes on this lot are about $300 a year. So I owe some money to Stanford and some to Reedsboro each year. And obviously, once this build is done, the taxes are going to go up to normal level, which is probably be more like $3,000. And then materials. So here we go. So the materials so far, and I've got a breakdown on some of these things. I'm about 23,000 into what you're looking at in terms of materials on this build, and the roofing I just priced and ordered, and that's going to be about another 4,000 for architect shingles. So as far as breakdowns on some of these items go, so I ordered 50 28-foot Doug fir 2x12s, which are this frame that you're looking at. There's going to be a few more that I have under that tarp down at the bottom there that are going to extend out to form an overhang on the deck end. So I bought about enough wood to do all of that, and those were about $135 a piece for a total price of $6,775. So yeah, materials do cost some money, but $23,000 plus the roof's $27,000. That's basically what the foundation costs. So you're looking at a little over $60,000 for what I've put into this so far. But you've got all that other infrastructure costs that are going to have to be added in. So my feeling is, you know, my brother's advice was like, go big. You know, you're putting all the rest of this money up, and materials really aren't that gigantic a slice of the pie when you've done everything else. And the livability of this is going to be enhanced by it being a little bigger, which is nice. So other little details. So for energy reasons, because I realize people don't always factor this in, but over the course of 10 years, or say the life of a house, the amount of money you spend heating it is going to be quite astronomical. If it costs you, say, $2,000 or $3,000 a year to heat and cool a building, over a course of time, you're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars. So you invest a few extra thousand during a build, and then all of a sudden you can really shave down the amount you're spending each year, and that's money back in your pocket. So there's 3-inch foam on the outside of this foundation all around, and in some areas it's got cement board on it to protect it, which eventually is going to get a coating of parging. I'm just walking around here to show you some detail. So this is a side. We're getting ready to plywood this. We haven't gotten to it yet, obviously. So the foam went on, and then cement board the upper 3 feet, and then because the build of the joist box above it raised it another 9.5 inches, I luckily had ordered enough of the styrofoam sheets to have pieces I could cut up. So these are little blocks of foam that are going in here, and that'll insulate the upper part, and then the plywood will go down over all this foam. And then I've put in a system of hurricane ties and hardware, which now is kind of covered up by foam. But we went to town really making this as hurricane proof as possible. This area actually doesn't get a terrific amount of wind because of the surrounding trees, but I want this thing to be bulletproof. Okay, here you can see where we put some strapping. So to convey the load, the green plates down there look a little crappy. There's foam all over them. But anyway, you can see the bottom of these hurricane ties. There's long screws they make that are like 2.5 inches long that are strong enough. You can't just use roofing nails or things like that like people used to use. They require stronger hardware, but these are screws made to hold these straps down. So we put a bunch of screws in here to hold the strap. So that rafter, if you've ever tried to tear off anything that had a joist hanger on it, it's murder. The fasteners are the first thing to fail. Little toe screws and toenails will tear right out, but in the event of a hurricane or something, these ties, these straps of metal, yeah, you can see how that goes down over here. There's a metal strap there. I just kind of hybridized it to make it fit. There we go. I got this foam block back in. But anyway, so we took what we had in the way of hardware. I modified some cases, took the little hurricane ties, added strapping to them to send them down in there where they'll link this thing together and add quite a bit of overkill. Let me get back to the cost part of this. So the foam board, 3-inch foam, 4x8 sheet, $90 each for the foam board. And I had, let's see, where is it? Foam board, okay, $90 a sheet and 120 linear feet, because these go the vertical way right down to the footings. So there's $3,000 in styrofoam. So over the course of time, that'll keep the basement naturally about 50, 55 degrees. The winter cold won't penetrate the house so easily. So that's a savings factor. And will protect the foundation between that and the cement board. And the drainage system they put under this, I shouldn't have any water get in. That's my hope anyway. They have a beautiful foundation drain that's all the way down to the footings that will send the water out. What else have we got to cover here? So foam board we covered, rafters, the adhesive on to hold the cement or the foam board to the walls, and the cement board to the foam was a couple $100. Cement board itself about $500 to have enough to just do the upper 3 feet. So here's the total costs here up to this point are $123,234, and I don't think I rolled the roof into that. I just calculated that. So it's about $127,000 of money invested thus far. And then things that are not included obviously are interior things, insulation, drywall, interior wood, windows and doors. There's going to be exterior log siding on the end walls. And the electricity, we're going to run it to the house, then we've got to wire the house. So these are things I don't have the estimates on. The septic, again, the estimate is $30,000. I don't know if I can shave that down. And then the heat, floors, and appliances are all add-ons. And I'm going to actually, hopefully over the course of the winter, be doing work inside. The goal by fall to get this totally closed in before snow flies and be able to put a little wood stove in the far corner. I'm probably going to use a heat pump to heat this with a wood stove for backup, but I'll probably put the wood stove in first so I can work in here in the winter. Have the power running by then so I can run some heat, and then probably one of the first things I'll do is insulate so that it'll hold the heat. And then this will be my workshop, and then we will build the interior, all the kitchen cabinets, probably most of the doors. Other than the interior and exterior, I want to actually build slab furniture and tables, kitchen cabinets, maybe beds, we'll see, frames. So, and then we'll be sheetrocking quite a bit of the interior, and then putting the second floor up there and framing that all in. So anyway, lots to go and money to go, but we're well along the way in the labor part of it. I intend to do pretty much from here on, it'll be myself, my brother, and a few other people. My sons are able-bodied when I can grab them and they have time, and my son-in-law is a good guy. He's been a roofer for many years, so he's going to be highly useful. So anyway, there you have it. That's an honest cost breakdown. So if you're thinking of taking on a project like this, you really kind of need to think ahead. You can just buy the land and save money, or borrow money, and that's all good. But just to share with you what you're actually looking at in terms of costs. If you can do the work yourself, or a lot of it yourself, you'll save money. I don't have the equipment or the know-how to have taken on all this kind of groundwork and site work and all this. If you have or know someone with an excavator, you can save quite a bit on doing a lot of this work. I kind of was eager to just get onto the build. It took a year to get the survey done, get the wastewater permit and the permitting all out of the way, during which time I was drawing up plans and considering options and just walking back and forth and enjoying the fact that I had this project ahead of me. So now at this point, we're into the thick of it, and now the labor part of it is really what I enjoy doing. So I was eager to actually get on this as soon as possible. Thus the benefit of hiring out a lot of this other stuff I didn't want to have to take on. And for doing one or two of these projects, it's not really, in my opinion, worth buying big machines and getting in way over your head into having to learn a whole other trade. I've been a carpenter for a long time. That's what I love doing. I love working with wood. So this is the exciting part I was waiting for. So anyway, glad to have you along on this journey. Hope you learned a little bit today about what this project is and the cost factors involved, and I'll continue to update as we move along. At some point I'll do more of a final cost breakdown, but I kind of took this on with the attitude of it's going to cost what it costs. I want it done right. So when I talked to the contractors, I basically said, listen, I trust you guys. You have good reputation, and I want this done right. It's more important that it's done right than it's done cheaply. I don't want to cut any corners. I want this thing as efficient and bulletproof as possible, and just to have it hold value and be a very sturdy little building that can withstand climate change and other things like that. And I want it to be really pretty. So here you have it, and I will tune in with you guys again later, and hopefully we'll be back on this build next week. Right now it's Sunday, August 4th. And we'll be going and doing some camping next week. But I expect to put a couple more days in. Goal next week of having the plywood up on one side, and then we're actually going to use the pulley system to start raising the roofing up. So we're going to just stay on the one side until the roof is on it, and then we'll switch the pulleys to the other direction and be able to run the plywood and the roofing up the other side. And hopefully by the end of August, my goal is to have the roof completely done and framed and roofed in, and then we can jump on the end walls and begin to close the two end walls in. And there actually are two dormers going up, one small one on the left for the kitchen, and a larger one that's going to go up 2 floors for the bedrooms, which are on the right side. So what you're looking at now, there will be some dormers protruding from it that'll add a lot of character, because they're going to have the same little roof pitch. The front porch will have the same roof pitch, so it's going to have a little bit of gingerbready appearance once those are on there. So that'll slow it down a little bit, but that'll be a lot of fun to build. So maybe by the end of August we'll have all that under wraps. It's a bit ambitious, but time's moving along, so we got to keep moving. Every day we can get a little bit done, we're going to do it. So anyway, good talking to you. I will tune in with you guys again probably next week. Yeah, have a good day.